Welcome to The Unfolding. I'm Olivier, and I'm really grateful you're choosing to spend some time with me. My intention is to explore topics about connection, meaning, and staying human in this digital age. If what you hear feels nourishing, you're welcome to subscribe, like, or follow. It's a simple way of supporting my work and helping it reach others. Thank you so much.
So Hans, how do you describe to people your activity? What do you do?
Well, I literally just thought about it because, of course, I'm aware that we're going to record the conversations. I'm already kind of, what am I going to say? But one thing that actually does come to me simply is that I'm trying to understand what reality is, and I really want to be more compassionate with myself. And yeah, that drive has taken me places. So yeah, studied philosophy, worked a bunch with plant medicines, did a pretty serious yoga teacher training, did a lot of meditation and tantra type stuff, and now NVC. And most recently coaching, specifically Alethea coaching, and all of those have brought me more self-connection, more understanding. So that's basically what I do, and it's also kind of transformed into helping others with trainings, with coaching and stuff like that.
So the idea was really to first take care of yourself somehow, and then it ended up being also taking care of others.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it comes from inspiration that, many people that study NVC a little bit seriously end up wanting to teach it because it's very, contagious. And also, when you experience the Alethea coaching method, you're like, or for me anyway, it was like, oh my God, this is just the same kind of experience as ayahuasca. And I have some skill in it and I would love to help people do it while also making a living. Possibly not yet. I'm not there yet, but it's just kind of a natural movement for me.
So Alethea coaching is a coaching that you started to do as a client, and then you really liked it and you got into it.
Yeah, I came into it in a funny way because I was doing a non-dual meditation course with Michael Taft. And then somebody there asked, hey, one of my coaches is wanting a guinea pig. And so I said, okay, free coaching. Where can I sign up? And I think I did 3 sessions with my coach, Michael Scalet, wonderful coach. And I was like, wow, this is extremely powerful. And I looked into it. And it just so happened that I had some budget for training because I got some money when I was kind of let go in a company due to a reorganization. So I thought, all right, I'm going to do an Alethea coaching, like year 1, which is already very powerful, including internal family systems and a few other modalities. And then in that training, you're also invited to, of course, start practicing. And then I was getting really quite amazing feedback and reviews. And so I thought, this is actually maybe where I'm strong. And what for me is also kind of a funny, I noticed it later actually, but there's kind of a funny lineage almost, because my father was one of the first hypnotherapists in the Netherlands. And Alethea coaching is, at detail level, very different. But, if you take a step back, it's very similar to hypnosis. So yeah, there's something in it for me.
How was it growing up with a father who was a hypnotherapist?
I actually didn't grow up with him. My parents were divorced when I was 3 years old or something like that. So I unfortunately didn't grow up with him. I found out later he was a pretty cool guy and still is. But he actually became a hypnotherapist because when he divorced my mother, or basically the other way around, that was a very traumatic experience for him. And he basically had kind of a spiritual breakthrough. I can tell you more about it if you want to, although it might be a bit weird for people. But then he also discovered he had some kind of skill and presence that helped people. But I didn't grow up with him.
Is he still alive?
Yeah, he's 84 at the moment.
Do you talk to him about all the stuff you're doing?
Yeah. You want to know more?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one thing I can say, there was a period in my life that I really didn't want to speak to him. I had a lot of judgments about him, and I think some of them were, correct, or let's say they were based on some real needs and experiences I had with him. I had a lot of anger towards him, but at some point I also thought, yeah, he's not that young anymore. I want to have a relationship with him. I don't want to regret not having known him. And what's happening for me is that, and especially since I became a father, and especially since I had, relationship breakup number 17,000, like, who am I to judge my father? And I had kind of a breakdown a few years ago. And in that breakdown, I was just seeing myself as completely miserable and useless and very horrible kind of self-reflection with some truth in it. And it was also the moment where real empathy for my brother and my father, who I always judged a lot, was becoming possible, because I always had this kind of subconscious conviction, or maybe not so subconscious, that I was better than them. And I thought, yeah, I'm exactly like them. And I need compassion for all three of us. So, and I really like my father. We still sometimes have our difficulties. We'll have a conflict or two here or there. And by the way, conflict, I think, is not always a bad thing. It can be very healthy to have conflicts. And I just realized not so long ago, maybe a few weeks ago, like, oh shit, when he dies, I'm going to be very, 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 very sad. And I never really had that before. Yeah.
So you didn't grow up with him, you grew up with your mom and your stepfather.
Yeah.
Are they still alive?
Yeah. And the stepfather I grew up with is not my current stepfather. My current stepfather is, they've been together now for a long time. I want to say something like 15 or 16 years. And he definitely has a kind of father place in my, let's say, family constellation. But the stepfather I grew up with as a child, from when I was 3 or 4 until I was really 17 or 18 or something, he was very troubled. My own psychoanalysis is that he was probably a sociopath. He was for sure an alcoholic. There was also some criminal activities, a piece of work, you could say. And he was very scary. And it was actually, it really had a very big impact that he was in my life. I assimilated a lot of toxic behavior, a lot of toxic ideas about myself. Sometimes the metaphor that came to me is that I am a young plant and the air around me is toxic, but I cannot but breathe that air because I have to breathe this. I am a plant and I cannot move away from the air. And that image really captures the, powerlessness and grief. And I also like the image because it kind of makes me have compassion for myself. I can see, I didn't have a choice. I did have very toxic behaviors.
I mean, as a child, you're really not in choice because you need the people around you to survive. And so I can imagine that growing up with a stepfather that had this kind of traits as you're describing must have been really tough. And there's like a real powerlessness there.
Yeah. And there's another layer to it. And I recognize this. I'll recognize it in my siblings, but I want to keep it to myself because I also notice it becomes an easy scapegoat for all my own shitty stuff. It's like, oh no, all my shitty stuff comes from that guy. And first of all, it's not true. It's also not useful. But there's kind of a cheat code for that I learned because I am not to blame. And actually, our shared friend Stephen taught me this. Stephen has done an enormous amount of healing work himself, and he's really an example for me. And I love that what he conveyed to me from his own trauma recovery life, because I am very much responsible for what is in me. like what Yoram always says, my reactivity is my responsibility.
By the
I'm
way,
not
for people who don't know, Yoram Mosenson is a nonviolent communication trainer.
Yeah, and we both learned with him and still do at some level, I believe. Speaking for myself anyway. So, but I am responsible, but I'm not to blame for it. So that is a big shift. There's a lot of shit in me. I think I've already processed a lot, and it's also I notice myself saying shit. I'm saying it just as a little quick way to say it. But there's also a judgment in it. So I still notice just now as I speak about it, there is still this judgment towards what I call shit in myself. But it's not shit. It's me. It is maybe a very contorted part of me. It's maybe, you have called it sometimes an exile, or I sometimes call it a wounded animal. And now actually I had a very powerful Alethea session last week, I believe it was, or 1.5 weeks ago with my coach. And I think what is coming now for me in this next few months, hopefully, is really approaching that wounded animal. And I actually did a family constellation as a participant last weekend, which was really intense. But something interesting happened there where I was placed as the father of somebody. And then the father was described as a kind of Jekyll and Hyde personality. And there was another person.
Before you say more, some people might not know what family constellations is. Can you say a few words about it?
Yes. So family constellation, and I am not an expert. I understand it on the surface, but it is basically using spatiality, so space, and for instance, let's take I'll just describe this example. So this person wanted to process his relationship and difficulties he had with it, with his father and with his mother. And what a family constellation can do is you can actually assign somebody as you are now my father, like a kind of a role being. And whatever parts or family members or other beings that are somehow important for you, you can put them in space. And then the coach or the therapist will kind of guide interactions with it. And for people aware of internal family systems, it is exactly that, but externalized. That's how I see it. And it's very powerful because using space, Yoram also does it sometimes when you do, for instance, an inner mediation with inner parts, to put parts of yourself on different chairs and to change chairs. So this is working with spatiality in that way, from my limited understanding, is so directly felt by your body because it's space. It's an extremely fundamental aspect of our consciousness. So if you work with space as your ally almost, you can, unfold and place and reflect and open up and slow down situations that are difficult for you. And it was quite intense because it's just very powerful work.
So a family constellation is you're put in a room and there are some other participants that are playing, for example, your father, your mother, people in your life. And through these interactions with these people that you might not know but embody these roles, it helps you learning, understanding, healing, exploring the dynamics you have within. Is that it?
Yeah, I would say so. And it can also be generational. So, your grandmother is being put there, but then the lineage before that, there's a lot of play to be done with that.
Okay. And so you had one recently that was impactful?
Exactly. So the one that I had a few days ago, it was my first one. But I recognize a lot that the kind of attunement is the same as internal family systems. And what I noticed for myself, so again, to remember, I was being placed as the father of that person. And this father was perceived by the kind of the main therapy, what do you call that? The person who was getting therapy, let's say, in that session. He described his father as a bit Jekyll and Hyde, so having a really nice side and a very difficult side, and a bit unpredictable which one would show up. And there was also alcoholism involved there as well. And what I noticed is that at some point, the coach or like the leader of the group, the facilitator, he said, okay, now let's take the other part of the father. And at some point, that was a little bit challenging for me, a little bit weird. The whole thing was very weird for me because it's really a kind of shamanic, energetic play of projection and embodiment, and it's trippy as hell. But then at some point, I as the father, I invited my other half to come closer to me, and I noticed how much I liked it. And what it means for me, I think, what I took away from it on a kind of intuitive level, is that I related it to that exile part, or that hurt part, or that part in me that I judge. And somehow for me, this was almost a premonition of the work I'm wanting to do with my Aletheia coaching, to really gently invite that part to come back to me with a lot of love, with a lot of care, with a lot of safety. So that is basically where I am at with my own personal process. It's super intense for me, but I'm also happy that I'm at a place now with a coach that I trust that I can do that. And I forgot how we got here, but that is about my current process.
Would you say that somehow the coach that you're having is having somehow of a father figure influence on you?
It doesn't feel like that for me. I know that it was quite clear for me that I have sought out men in my life to have some kind of a father figure role. I don't feel that so much with him. Maybe it's to do that I actually have regained my own father. You know, my inner child didn't have a father. But in my adult life, I now do have a father. And so I don't think I'm looking for one anymore. What is more important for me is that I can trust Michael, my coach. And also, I've, with my own, mostly my NVC journey, I've been more and more aware of my needs, more and more able to feel them and communicate them. And so I'm now in a place where I can show up to a meeting and say, I'm sorry, I don't like this. I want to go slower. I'm needing more safety. I was much less or not able to do that 10 years ago. I would just have been triggered, walked away, and not even know what's happening. And now, I really contributed to mostly NVC. I believe I can care for my own safety more. So that is, beautiful.
It's a big thing. Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah, hearing about the whole idea of father figure and how it has been like for you makes me think of how I have the understanding that in society right now, there's really a challenge and a problem with the fact that there are so many kids that don't have a father figure, that don't have a male figure in their lives. So it doesn't have to be a genetic father, but just really having like a man that they can trust and feel safe with.
Yeah.
And inspired by as well. I know that for me, I had a father, but because there was a sense of danger at home with him because of the verbal and sometimes physical violence, I have also been seeking father figures outside of my family in order to find my own strength and be inspired. And now that I see that we're both hosting the NVC men's group, my understanding is that men need more places where they can identify to a different way of being men. And I'm really mourning the lack of inspiration for young men to really be their true self with other men. What's your journey with that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I really recognize that sense of not feeling safe at home. That's exactly my experience. And I think I have often been a man that wasn't exactly safe to be around. So for me, the work is quite deep. and it involves shadow work. Like I said, I had to breathe in toxic shit, toxic air, and so that image of a man that is not safe to be around, whether emotionally or differently, that is also in me, and I accept it. It's my path, it's my practice, it's my healing, and I'm taking responsibility for it. It's shitty sometimes. And so I guess what comes out of it for me is seeing my own dark side. I have understanding, not always empathy, really, but definitely understanding for the dark side of men, which is the dark side of human, right? It's humanity. Women also have maybe different, maybe not different dark sides. It's not completely gendered, but there is, of course, the obvious fact that most men tend to be physically stronger. There's the aspect of physical violence. What it results in for me is that for a lot of my life, I've been weary of men. I've been mistrusting, having a lot of competition, sense of competition. And that's also, I want to say that's natural. I don't want to judge that. I think that we live in a body that has evolved to try to reproduce. There's all these biological impulses to be at the top, or to at least, get to impregnate a female. I don't say that's me, but that's my body, and it has evolved that way. And violence is, if you look at nature, it's a natural part of it. And mostly, if you look at other mammals, there is conflict, there is physical violence. The one who wins gets the female, and I see that as part of nature. I'm not saying that's good or we should do that. I'm just saying, I see that it's also in me. There's a very different aspect to it, I think, because I think when you look at most of those fights in the animal world, they don't kill each other a lot of the time. It's more like, you're obviously stronger, I'm just going to go away because I want to live. And then the winner typically doesn't kill the other, I think, mostly, at least some of the time. What goes really wrong with humanity, or what that's my perspective, is that we are really, in the Western world mostly, we are very separated from nature, very separated from ourselves. You see it in capitalism. You see it in the hyper individualization and the idea that we have to be independent. And also, I like what Steve March says about it. That's the originator, the creator of Aletheia coaching, and he bases a lot of his work on Heidegger. It's what we've done in the West with our separating from nature, separating body from mind, and prioritizing rationality over embodiment. It's become this logical, rational, technological attunement, whereas what Heidegger proposes is a different way to attune to the world and to each other, is poetic, is felt, is mystic, is undescribed. My point is that what goes very wrong in our conflict and our technological attunement, just look at the Second World War. It's the industrialization of killing each other. That is one thing that I don't think happened before that. It's super gruesome, but to link it to my own life, the reason why my stepfather was a sociopathic alcoholic is because his stepfather was forced to be an interpreter, a translator to interrogate the Nazis after the Second World War. And that is such an enormous trauma. I think we're going to deal with that for hundreds of years yet. Intergenerational trauma. And I got a piece of that through my stepfather. It's just, and that's also, I call my program non-dual communication, and we have talked about it before. Yeah, what does it mean? Well, one of the things it means is that there's no separation. There's just this wave of trauma going through our human collective fabric, and I'm just here now at this point of the human collective fabric, moving through time, having this. I got this passed on, this trauma. And so how it shows up in my life, to take it back to your question, yeah, I've been afraid of men, of course. I had a very scary father in my life. My own father wasn't there. I missed him. And instead, I was this little plant breathing toxic air. And you mentioned the men's group. We both started that. We kind of had the idea at the same time or something. And it was a beautiful meeting of fate that we now started it together. And it's just amazing. And one of the things that does for me is that, I'm now in a space with men. And also I created that space with you together, but I have a very creative place in it. It's so empowering to have created that safe place for men, that we can all be vulnerable. We can, not literally, but drop down our swords and our shields, and we're just here, we're here vulnerably. And that definitely creates an experiential mismatch between my original idea of men, which was scary, enemy images, nervous system activation, because actually, typically, in the beginning of a men's group, I am nervous because it's men. But after a few minutes, especially after the check-in, I can relax. Oh yes, I remember we are, maybe it's almost a shift from men, this image of men, to we're humans. We are together. And again, there's this non-duality that I really like. And I believe that sense of connection is also an expression of non-duality. We are not separated. We are together. So that's a really long answer with a lot of little rabbit holes, but that's my answer to your question.
Your experience of men is really changing because you're co-creating this space with me. And so from being at a place where men represent fear and danger, it's starting to take the shape of, with men, I can also be myself, seen, valued, and experience togetherness.
Yeah. And a beautiful side effect is, by the way, because we drop our guard, we drop our shields, we drop our swords as we go into mostly the Zoom room. I see what's behind the shield. I see what's behind the mask, and people see what's behind my mask and behind my shields and behind their projections of me and my projections towards them. But now when I am, out there in the world where the people are maybe not trained in NVC, don't even know what that is, have never been in a men's group. So the men I meet on the street typically don't have that awareness of the soft side of other men, but I have the awareness of their soft side, and that makes that's such a pleasant, different way. Yesterday I was at a bakery and I saw somebody who had the same jacket as me because it was a Levi's jacket, and I made a joke. I said, "Hey, you have a very original jacket. I have the same." But it's just, I think I always had that playfulness with other people in general. But it's also, I'm coming in without my shield, without my sword. I'm basically saying, "Hey, I'm your friend. How are you doing? Goodbye." So yeah, it changes that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can really, really resonate with those restorative experiences. Last week, I was hosting a men's group here in London, and I had a duo with one of the guys. And at first sight, I would think, oh, this is kind of a tough guy, quite strong and tall. And someone I would see in the street. I would not necessarily get the sense that, oh, this is someone that has a lot of vulnerability and that I can, feel touched by the emotions or something like that. And we had that time together, and he shared about what was there for him and his challenges and his fear, and I felt so touched. I could see so much the vulnerability, the humanity, wow, I was really, really incredibly touched. And that made me realize then, oh, from now on, whenever I see a man like that in the street, I will know that they might be so much more than what I thought previously.
Yeah.
And yeah, I find it so beautiful that we're able to have these kind of healing experiences that make us see men really in a different light.
Yeah,
and I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful also because that really started partly together of initiating this men's group journey.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'm grateful for you too, because the way I met you was you were an assistant in a course where I was super new at NVC, and you had already done an IIT or something. You were already like super comfortable laying there, not facilitating, but assisting. And I thought, I need to reach out to him. I can learn from him. And I definitely have over the past, I don't know, more than 5 years, almost 6 years now. We keep saying 5 years, but soon it's going to be 6 years that we did the men's group together. So yeah, that's been amazing. Yeah.
I'm curious, what do you think are the things you've learned with me?
That's difficult to say, but I want to try. I'm now thinking, if I am silent too long, you have to edit. I think I'm going to say I don't know, but it's something more general, probably around care. Well, one specific thing comes to me. You are very good in my judgment of naming needs, always including needs. I don't do that so much. I think it's also just how I speak. But of course, just how I speak is a very big part of NVC. But there's a question in me around it, which is, how much is it about the words I use, and how much is it about the inner consciousness? And at the same time, they're very related, because the words I use also shape my consciousness. It's kind of a feedback loop. I honestly would say just skill level. And also, I see you as having a lot of genuine care. And that I find inspiring. I find it humbling. Another thing I would say I learned is that one of my problems, let's say, one of my challenges is to stop comparing myself. So I always compare myself to people. It's fine. It's normal. But if I compare myself to you, I always fall short, because you're perfect at being you, and I will never be as good as being you as you are. And at the same time, now comes some clarity about what I learned. It's that it's really about not trying to be somebody. And that's sometimes difficult for me, because I'm always, I say but there's a part of me that I created probably as a child that is really good, at least in its imagination, at figuring out what other people would probably most like to hear. And then if I say that, I'll be liked. And that is not meeting my need for authenticity. So the strongest skill I have at my disposal, and also sometimes the most challenging one, is to slow down enough to take a breath. And in that slowing down, I can actually feel myself. And then I can speak from my existence instead of, I can be, sometimes I say I can be in relation instead of being in calculation. There's always this calculation. What should I do? What is the best thing to say? What do they want to hear? What does she want to hear? What might this group think is, how would they accept me? All this calculation. And when I'm in relation, I'm really speaking from my authenticity. And then I also don't need validation, because I'm already in contact with myself. And the validation seeking that is definitely there in me is actually a wish to feel myself. So something like that.
Being in relation, not in calculation.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. That'll make such a cool short. I'm just thinking about that. Yeah. Do you have that too when you are recording stuff, like, oh, this is a good segment, or oh, this I'm gonna, do you have that or not?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Starting to. I was thinking the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I've learned doing this with you, I've learned many things.
I know what you're gonna say.
You know what I'm gonna say?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me what you're gonna say. Tell me what I'm gonna say.
Do you really want me to?
Yeah.
Trusting conflict more. Is that it?
Do you want to develop?
Well, you've shared before with me that I have had my triggers with you, you've had them with me, and it was a bit of a journey, and sometimes still is, to figuring each other out, owning what is mine, which is a big one for me, especially in our work. One of my themes is standing in my power. Another generational thing, my father, I believe, unfortunately, walked away from his power, walked away from his role, right? He blames my mother and her family. I believe there's truth there, but I also see, but you walked away. I see it in more family members, but I want to kind of protect their privacy. For myself, I have that tendency too, to walk away from my power, and it's super painful. And it's been an amazing challenge with you and an amazing trip that with my comparison jackals, kind of judgments of comparison, and seeing you honestly is awesome. I still do. You're just such a great facilitator. Anyone working with you, I'm like, yeah, I totally understand why you want to work with Olivier. He's amazing. And so it's been this double thing of finding my own authenticity next to you, which has been vulnerable and so good for me. And with that, standing in my power. And that's actually a really cool thing. One of the things I learned, maybe it's very obvious for some people, but for me it was a big eye opener, is that being very strong often feels very vulnerable. And there's this curious overlap. Yeah. And now I'm also a little bit aware that I completely crashed into your expression, and I'm wondering how that was for you. I trust it, but I also want to check with you how you are with it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed hearing it. And I would say the first thing that comes is a little bit different than what you thought. And it might also be a little bit triggering. So if it does trigger something new, I'll be happy to welcome it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what I've learned with you is through some kind of a mirror effect. Because a lot of things that I can see in you, I see in me. And there is not many people with who I feel so much shared reality about specific things, on the way I would see you react to things, react to me, react to people in the men's group. And because I see these things, I'm like, oh, I do that too. I do that too. And it's very supportive for me to have this kind of mirror, because I'm more aware of what's going on there. And because I'm more willing to also accept it in you, somehow I'm able to accept it in me better, or have more compassion for it. And I really see it as a gift that it's enjoyable to have that. That's one thing. And also sometimes in the way that we communicate, and how I see you as having a lot more ease into being fast and being efficient. And it's almost like a lot of the time what I see in you, I see in myself with others, wanting things to go faster, wanting things to go a certain way. But you're like next level, which I enjoy and I find rare in the way that you are doing it. It really helps me on like understanding myself better. Also with motivation, sometimes a little bit of embarrassment, because I wish I was as proactive as I can see you sometimes. But really, there's this big learning opportunity for me to be in relationship with someone like you through what we're doing with the men's group.
Mm.
And I really like that. I'm curious of how that lands on you.
Yeah, it's so nice, because you said it was going to be triggering, because that makes me think, there were some judgments there, but you're so aware of your needs and your process, and you've processed so much of it that's actually no judgment left, but you can just see needs met, needs not met, growth process. And I know kind of what you're on about, let's say, because if I work with somebody or let's say actually this family constellation work that I did a few days ago, this was an amazing facilitator, really good. He owned it. And I also see, I'm missing some very important things as well that I would do differently. And it's just, to watch somebody else at work, you're going to see, I used to do that too, and I'm guessing that's a little bit how it is for you, that you see things that you maybe used to do, or maybe sometimes still do a bit, but then it's this reflection, oh, that's how it looks, and that's how it actually plays out. And when you see me interacting with somebody where you may be missing a need, it's super informative for you. And I'm very happy, and I think that works both ways. Although I imagine, Comparison Jackal is a little bit more that I learned a lot from you in the last few years, and for you it was probably more, seeing what you like a bit less in facilitation, and that's fine, because I have been very new at facilitation, especially in the beginning. I think I stepped much more into my own power, like what I just described about, I don't have to be anybody else that will only kind of disempower me. Obviously, it's obvious when you say it, but it's when you're working through your own psychological stuff, you're in the middle of it, and it's less obvious, and it's therefore a path. So I'm very cool with that. And there was something else I think I wanted to say, but I'll leave it there because I don't know what it was anymore. But it's totally fine, and I like the honesty, and I just keep learning from you a lot, even today.
It's really, really sweet. I'm touched hearing that. And the next thing that I want to say is how much I have learned so much through the conflicts that we've had. And that's what you were guessing I would bring, or really all the conflicts that we've had, and the time that you took to look at them together and to hear one another. This is not something I've experienced in many men before at all. I've experienced that with women a few times, but this willingness for a man to take the time to go through conflict and hear me, that was very, very powerful for me in creating a different experience of what it's like to be men together. I'm very, very grateful for that. I'm still, whenever I think about it, it still lives in me with a lot of love and a lot of gratitude once again. Yeah. And what comes to you when you hear that?
I love hearing that. What comes to me is that I think for me also my own relationship with conflict has changed. And just to give an example, I think what changed for me is trust, and a lot of it is because of our interactions. And what changed for me is because of our interactions, I have a lot of trust. And there's been this recent development that I have been able to be holding my dignity and my composure more. Definitely not always, but in some very pivotal moments, I have been able to keep my composure, keep my dignity, keep speaking in terms of collaboration, keep standing for my own needs when there was a very high intensity. So conflict situation at work, this internal family systems, which was just a really strange experience for me, where everybody was pretending that I was somebody who I was not, and I wanted to take a timeout. I wasn't allowed a timeout. And that really threw me back onto myself and my inner resource, and I was able to process it in the moment. In the past, I had moments where such intensity arose that I was almost stepping a bit out of reality. In my inner, I just had this strange warping experience, and now I've been able to hold it better. And I also want to include, so there was this conflict at work, there was this internal family systems moment, and also this Alethea session I had a few weeks ago where there was a lot of intensity and I was with it. So there's something, and another thing I want to say, because you asked, how is it for me? I wanted to add as well that I think my relationship to intense emotions is changing, and my relationship to conflict has already changed quite a bit. And I forget sometimes that people in my life are not in that place. And then it's such a different experience with conflict. And I want to remember that, for some people, it's just a no-go area. It's very dangerous and scary, and I totally get it. I'm more willing to go into intensity and conflict, but then I really want to care for people who do not want to go there. And so it's kind of this process of inner evolution, but then you need to keep attuning and calibrating. Okay, but where is the other person? I guess I want to kind of remember that as I go along. So that's kind of what comes to me.
Yeah, that resonates a lot with some of my experience. And one thing that I'm really wanting to keep in mind all the time is that I'm going to be with a lot of people that have really not the same awareness as I have around conflict and around wanting to dive into it and trusting that there is something beautiful that will show itself if we look at it long enough.
Yeah.
When it comes to conflict. And so in order to deal with the world in the way it is right now, I want to make sure I have so much support. And that's why, for example, the men's group has been amazing for me, because I'm facilitating it, but also it's such a beautiful resource.
Yeah.
In terms of people that can be there for me and listen to me in moments where other people in my life don't have this capacity, this mastery, or these skills. And I'm also really celebrating how much, for example, my brother-in-law, and a lot of close people, my flatmates, like I'm surrounding myself with people that have a lot of skills at diving into conflicts and at welcoming it, but also some of the people that did not have it in the past are now having it more and more, like my partner. So I'm really celebrating that. And also I still want to have a contact with the world outside of this circle, which is really, really different, and where there's so much pain and so much disconnection. And the whole journey for me has been around communication, and now I'm seeing how much it's also really about systemics and about how we really create system where our needs can be met in easier ways when conflict erupts closer to us, or when there are challenges, that we can have this support system of reliance. I don't know if that resonates with you.
Yeah, a lot is, or maybe not a lot, but some deep stuff is touched in me listening to you there, and it will take a moment to find words for it, I think. Yeah, so one thing that comes is that I've been noticing a real shift. Let's say, so in NVC and nonviolent communication, there's this distinction between Jekyll and giraffe. Jekyll consciousness, giraffe consciousness. So Jekyll consciousness being kind of believing your judgments, I would say, and operating from judgments and thinking that is, that is reality. Actually, there's a confusion of judgments with reality, I would say. Whereas giraffe is the understanding that judgments are mental fabrications that are kind of a contortion of experience reality in the body, let's say. And so Marshall Rosenberg really invites us to go back into the body. What are my judgments telling me? But in the sense that, well, what am I feeling? So I did a live session a few days ago on Insight Timer where we did the guilt process. It was super cool. People were going from judgments, and then I said, now look at your judgment and what do you feel when you see your judgment? So they shifted towards feelings. And then I wrote all the needs in the chat. And now what needs stand out to you? That was so cool. And that's basically the NVC process. There's much more to say about it, but it is that shift towards, I sometimes call it a pilgrimage from my head to my heart. It was so awesome to see that in practice. But what I noticed recently, I think, is that some big part of me has really kind of migrated to giraffe consciousness. And I felt something that I haven't felt yet. I believe that, I'm maybe starting to be more really giraffe. And it's not just for me NVC. It's NVC for me is part of my awareness, part of my toolkit, part of my, my work. There's more in it for me. And the more is also, reality is not what we think it is. In NVC that already has a place, because the Jekyll paradigm is believe in your thoughts. So it's the same. Reality is not what we think it is. But it's for me also, it goes a bit farther than that. I think that we have a very narrow understanding of, what is this dimension? What are we doing here? Who are we? What am I? And then we, of course, science gives all sorts of answers, but science gives the kind of answers that scientific questions can give rise to. That's just one short part of the total spectrum of engaging with the world, engaging with reality. I think the truth is, if I go more into my body, I just don't know. I have no idea. And so if I can be humble enough to go into not knowing, then I realize, I become more present. But I guess what I'm wanting to say is something like, I've made this shift, you can say towards giraffe, but it's bigger for me. I'm more relaxed and more, I think this is the thing, I'm more at home in mystery and in not knowing. And I love that. A while ago, years ago, I was at, it was actually some psychedelic festival or something. I had a congested nose and somebody said, you're allowed to trust your curiosity more. And that stuck with me. Sometimes things can happen in such places that they're a little bit, I don't know.
I'm not sure I understand. You had your nose blocked and somebody told you to be curious about your nose being blocked?
No, he just said, and I think it was more like a symbolic interpretation or whatever it was. He just invited me to follow my curiosity more. It was kind of
relating to your nose being blocked?
Yeah, so I think what this person kind of did was to interpret my nose blockage as maybe a somatic expression of a spiritual situation, which I think is probably very close to the truth, or I think there's a very wise way to approach illness, for instance. And so in any case, for me, it was somehow meaningful. There was something like, oh yeah, I like that. And it stuck with me. And so, science, and I believe that true science and humble scientists, they always say, we don't know. This is just our best guess. And they're doing amazing work. I love science, by the way. But there's a very large group of people who subconsciously take science to be the truth, take scientific papers that are typically written very carefully, but they're interpreted as the truth, as conclusions. And you lose actually the very thing that makes science, which is curiosity. And so I think, let's just keep it for myself, to kind of step away from my certainties, to realize that they're assumptions, that they're thoughts, they're not reality. I can kind of relax back into presence, like, I actually don't know. And I can then be curious. So curiosity comes from that not knowing. Again, I don't know quite how we got here, but for me, curiosity, not knowing, the mystery, I guess I'm describing, there has been this shift for me into some unknown place. Yeah,
hearing you, I can only resonate with a lot of my journey recently on kind of wanting to lay down in curiosity and just allow experiences to be there without me trying to change them as much. And still there is panic, and still there is states of despair and wanting to just make the world different, and also a real sense of acceptance and of like surrendering to my existence and of its shortness with a sense of curiosity. There's a lot of men that feel lonely and don't have the opportunity to have the kind of friendships that we have, or the quality of relationships that you and I might be able to experience. And I'm wondering, to people that really want to have a more connected experience of life and less loneliness, what do you recommend?
Yeah, the obvious answer is, join an NVC course, join groups where authenticity and honesty is combined with safety and, a sense of protection as well. I think for me, what makes it possible for me to keep on going forward is to also care for what I'm not ready to share yet. So I recently recorded a podcast with Ezekiel, and he was at some point suicidal, really thinking about it. And what helped him a lot was nonviolent communication. I don't think that will be the cure for everybody, but I definitely think that just expressing is what a lot of men don't learn to do as boys. There's a bit of it's a bit of what do you call that? A caricature almost. Yeah, boys are not supposed to cry and girls are supposed to play with dolls and everything. And there's a truth to that. That there is, I think, a lot of boys that are told, yeah, don't cry, or that are, I think, literally told, if you tell somebody not to cry, you're basically telling them don't express your emotions. It's just that's the message, and it's dangerous. I mentioned earlier that there's this hyper individualization. I think there's a crisis on the planet. Well, there are many crises depending on your perspective, but one of the crises that we have is the crisis of young men that are extremely lonely, that have very toxic ideas about women, fueled by pornography and by hateful influencers. It's not good. I think what's healthier is to express yourself, but also, not believe your thoughts so much. And I do believe that finding NVC groups is one way to go. I want to say there are a million ways to self-connect, to express. If, we just mentioned suicide, for anybody listening, talk with somebody. And if you can't, write it out. But don't believe necessarily what you write. Preferably talk with somebody. But that's a very extreme case. I think many men just need to talk. Like, humans need to express. I think especially humans in the West, especially humans in cities in the West, where we're bombarded with stimuli that we don't really process. It all happens under the surface, and you're building up tension, stress. You're not expressing it. Many of us get depressed, get anxious. We don't know why. Talking about it is just such a, and especially, of course, there's two parts, right? There's talking about it. That means somebody's listening. So we need good listeners as well on the planet. I think nonviolent communication, and specifically the style that you and I have learned from Joram Mosenson, is a beautiful way to take the pressure off, to find community. I think there are so many men lonely, just alone. They kill themselves because they're just miserable. And again, that's an extreme case, but we also kill little parts of ourselves metaphorically, or maybe not so metaphorically, by just holding it all in, pushing it down, not looking at it, and we're just living it, from one small part of ourselves. For many men, they developed a professional part of their ego that's very well behaved, that is cleanly shaven, well dressed, and that is that little part of them that lives their life. And then there's this whole jungle, mystery, the depth, that is just not lived. And I think, that's just a missed. It's a missed opportunity, but it's also dangerous and it's unhealthy. One of the ways I like a lot the word, the term emotional hygiene, when we do a check-in, when we share our feelings, is really letting it all out. Words are not just words. Words are energy, and airing it all out is energetic hygiene. It's just emptying yourself. I remember one conversation with you where I was kind of in my own bubble, and I know we had a check-in, and I just felt more in reality. And for some men, for a lot of men, that happens. They have that bubble. They are like kind of weirdly disconnected from reality, but they never have that reconnection, or it comes far too late. Another thing I want to mention, actually, is that okay for you that I go a bit on?
Yeah.
Because there's also, for me personally, earlier, I think I can say, well, let's say it like this. We had a little check-in with some other men of the men's group, and one of them said that he misses hugging. And he really said he likes to hug you. And you are a nice hugger. I love your hugs as well. But many men in our Western society only have touch with other women but we only have it when we have a relationship, and many men don't have relationships. So that basic need for touch is already left alone for many men at a very young age, and they only have it when they have a woman. And this, by the way, also severely sexualizes touch for men. Whereas touch is not necessarily sexual, but for me, it has become highly sexualized because of this, which for me can be problematic sometimes. And I had my ways of dealing with it. But this is another dimension of disconnect for men that we could use so much care around.
I can see often women hugging in public spaces, and there's no worries about that. But it's much less rarer to see men having just friendly touch and cuddles. And as you're saying, so many men don't experience touch at all. And touch being one of the main needs of human beings, no wonder that there's such an intensity in so many men that gets lost because there's the taboo around touch.
Yeah.
And so it gets into sexuality and abuses and sexual violence even, because that need for touch really is intense.
Yeah. I also recorded a podcast with Joram Mosenson a while ago, and he shared a very, very tragic story about sexual abuse. And but what was behind the transgression was such an urgent need for touch and closeness. So the strategy that the person chose was just horrible, painful, traumatic for both. But I'm not making any simplistic generalizations, but I do want to say that you just said it yourself. I'm just kind of underlining it, that withholding touch from men as a society is dangerous. It literally keeps them out of touch with reality, and it creates excesses because the need is so basic, like you said. I was just reminded of that conversation, and although it's super tragic, part of me enjoys seeing that, because that means, oh, there's so much value for this message to come out.
Yeah, when there's something that was coming to me earlier when you were speaking, I was liking that you were saying like, yeah, go to do some NVC, nonviolent communication. I want to add up also like, yeah, also if you can afford it, go to see a therapist or someone that might help with that. And there are more and more men's group happening around the world. And I really encourage these kind of spaces to speak, because one thing that came up to me when you were saying, oh, if you feel suicidal, talk about it. I felt suicidal a lot of times in my life. It was not necessarily very intense, but the thoughts were very much there, and sometimes it was more intense than others. And most people had a really hard time hearing it if ever I was talking about it. So there's such a challenge for people to hear these kind of words because it touches on their own fears. And so, yes, for me, I spoke about it, but it was not necessarily well welcomed, or with a lot of like fear or pity or powerlessness in front of me. And what really did help was being in spaces where that could be heard, or from people that could actually hold the intensity of it. So I wanted to add, like, yeah, going to places, look for places where people have skills to listen, because obviously if you're going to your colleagues and during the coffee break you tell them that you want to kill yourself, they might not have the skills to hold that. And I think in more and more cities there are men's groups where men can go and talk about these kind of things, and I think there are women's group as well. I fear a little bit less about how it's like for women, because I believe that there's more ease for women to speak, but it's really not always the case, especially when it comes to things like suicide, which is such a big taboo. As well as many other things. But suicide has like a specific color to how difficult it is for people to hear it.
Yeah, and if I may add, I think there are statistics that women attempt suicide more often, but men succeed more often because they're inherently more violent. I smile a bit, but it's wry. It's a wry smile.
Yeah, so now that we're talking about spaces where people can be heard and learn to listen, you are going to be hosting an NVC, nonviolent communication workshop very soon. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a thanks for bringing it up. It's not a workshop necessarily, but it's a course. There's 8 sessions on Zoom, so it's online. Which is exactly that. It's really an introductory course in nonviolent communication. So people learn how to listen. What does it mean how to listen? How do I listen without, what we call empathy blockers? How do I connect? What are my needs? What are the 4 steps of NVC that will really help me understand situations and make clear requests? So for me, it's just been what I put into the course is what's been transformational for me is the consciousness of NVC, is the tools of NVC. I would love people to join. I definitely have some places left. I also want to mention another course that I made, which is of a different kind. It's on Insight Timer. It's a meditation app that I have a channel on, which is specifically a course about listening.
Yeah, and also I will put all the informations for contacting you for your coaching, for the courses that you're hosting in the links below in the description.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great.
Hans, thank you so much for this conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. I'm very grateful for all the things that we're doing together and very celebrating the things that you're doing on your own. I hope a lot of people will be able to experience your presence and your care because I really love it. And yeah, thanks for being part of this podcast. And I hope we'll have another one very soon.
I look forward to it. Yeah, thanks a lot. I know you invest your time in it as well. It was a real joy. I was a bit nervous at the beginning, but I like that I was able to touch my authenticity and speak from there. So thank you, because again, this is your facilitation. Your presence is just amazing. So thank you for that. And yeah, speak soon.
Speak soon.